Hello everyone, my name is Layla. Welcome to the first episode of Reproduction of the Angry Black Women, where I will be exploring different ways that the angry black woman stereotype has been represented across many media forms. Today, I will be talking about a graphic novel that I love so much. It is called Destroyer by Victor LaValle. Beautifully portrayed the mad scientist trope that I love to read about. This book in particular touches on a very heavy topic that is really real in our world. I am very excited to talk about this graphic novel, so grab a blanket, grab some hot tea, and get comfortable so we can dive into this incredible story. So I would like to start this podcast by giving you an overview of what the book is about. I'm not going to spoil it for you because I think you should really read it for yourself, but it is an incredibly illustrated graphic novel. It focuses on a black female scientist whose name is Dr. Josephine Baker. Incredibly genius. She works with nanotechnology, which I think is super cool. But first of all, Dr. Baker is a descendant of Victor Frankenstein. So this graphic novel takes place in a separate world where, of course, Frankenstein was a real story and part of their history. As a matter of fact, with Dr. Baker being a descendant of Frankenstein, you could say that she inherited his genius, his madness a little bit too. It just adds to the story. It's really amazing. But another important detail about this character, Dr. Baker, is that she is a mother. She had a 12-year-old son named Akai, who was really sweet, very wholesome. He enjoyed playing baseball. Unfortunately, baseball was the thing that got him killed. The first part of the book that I started tearing up in. When Akai was 12 years old, he played in a baseball game. He was walking home, just going to the bus stop to go home, and a woman, whom I presume to be a white woman, she called the police saying that there was an 18 to 20-year-old black male walking down the sidewalk with a rifle, when in reality it was this 12-year-old black boy coming home with a baseball bat, and the police responded and he was shot to death. It was caught on the police dash cam, but of course, as we know, the police don't always get the right jurisdiction in that area. Of course, when that happened, Dr. Baker just secluded herself to her lab, and she devoted her life to her science, and she figured out a way to revive her son using her nanotechnology. And in the process, she created her son to be a metahuman, an incredibly powerful metahuman that can literally melt bullets, melt guns, an incredibly powerful being that can ultimately outlive us all, because the nanobots are replacing each of his decayed cells. Excuse my temporary nerd tangent. I just love mad scientist things, especially nanotechnology. That's something that I just find really fascinating. I think the plot of the book was amazing. The images were amazing. Really nice illustrations. And it called on these Black history moments. They're not historical, but one thing in particular that I love about the format of the book was there are a lot of flashbacks and there are a lot of historical moments, and it allowed me to really look into the mind of Dr. Baker, and I got to see what she was feeling, what she was thinking about, things that made her who she is today. Alright, before we get into the really good stuff, I want you to take a break, take a moment to just stretch, walk around a little bit, get some snacks, refill your tea. It's about to get really serious. So first, I want to talk about what made her so angry to create this angry black woman that we see portrayed. So obviously, the answer is her son's murder. That would make me angry. I'm not a mother, but I understand the close bond that mothers and sons have. Mothers with their children, period, but especially losing your child in such a tragic way and not getting the appropriate justice for it, that would absolutely piss me off. I don't know about you guys. So of course, what we often see when we see an angry black woman is a trail of destruction, so to speak. But what I find to be so amazing about Dr. Baker is that even though ultimately it did lead to destruction, the first thing that happened as a result of it was she got engrossed in her quest for knowledge. And I see that a lot with mad scientists, is that they just want to learn, whether it makes them obsessive, whether it makes them crazy, whatever. She devoted her life to her science, which led to her son's rebirth. Talk about women in STEM. As a matter of fact, talk about black women in STEM. Now I want to take the time to appreciate some of the things that Dr. Baker says in the novel, because in one quote, she literally acknowledges and pinpoints the angry black woman stereotype that she is a part of. Originally not part of the stereotype by choice or by preference, but later she embraces it because it fuels her science and it inspires her and it gives her that motivation, that drive. The first quote I want to talk about is in chapter 3 of the novel. Dr. Baker says, "Do you know that in all my years as a scientist, I've usually been treated in 2 ways. Either I've been invisible or I've been an angry black woman. I can't describe how frustrating this has been." This quote has been in my mind since I first read the novel a couple months ago. I just love that Dr. Baker is honest about the workplace that she's been in and how probably one of the few black women, there were a couple black men, but probably one of the few black women that were in that workplace, she acknowledges what that's been like. And she's talking to white guys as she's discussing this. And I just want you to think about how that might feel to be viewed in one of 2 negatives, either being invisible, insignificant background character, or this loud, chaotic figure that is just angry all the time. Like, I want you to think about that. Think about either if you've experienced that or if you can't relate to it, but I want you to just imagine that. Like, imagine how that might feel to be either insignificant or just extreme. Another quote I want to talk about is in chapter 5. This is near the end of one of the big battle scenes of the novel. And Dr. Baker is talking to her son. Now, this is another part where my heart was hurting a little bit. But she was talking to her son about what he's made out of because he didn't quite understand. I mean, he's 12 years old and he'll never grow up because his nanobots are ultimately replacing his biological matter. So Akai is asking, what am I made out of? Am I never going to die again? Why is it that I'll never grow up? Dr. Baker is explaining to him that he will most likely outlive all humans and there will be probably a new race of technology-based artificial life, artificial intelligence. In a way, she's kind of putting this pressure on him, saying, you are the beginning of what will replace us humans. She's warning him about the possibilities of how the humanity race will end, like global warming will kill the humans, but they'll still be surviving. And she warns him that people will probably blame him for being the start of this race, but also people will be blaming her for creating Akai in the first place because Akai is the beginning of what will be replacing all the humans. So the blame will fall on both Akai and Dr. Baker. At this point, Dr. Baker is referring to herself as the destroyer. So maybe we can deduce from this that the destroyer that this book is titled on is Dr. Baker, but who do you think the destroyer is? I'll leave that up to your interpretation. So here's the quote from chapter 5. Some will even blame you for our end, and for creating you, they'll label me mankind's enemy too, the destroyer, and I will welcome the title. If it kept you safe, I would destroy them all. What I love about that quote so much is that Dr. Baker here is saying that the reason for her madness and her anger as a black woman is because she's a mother. And when she lost Akai, that not only fueled her science, but once her son was resurrected thanks to her science, she says, she's talking to him and she's saying, I made you, you'll probably outlive us all, but I just want you to know that no matter what, I would do anything to save your life. And that I just think is so beautiful. So my full analysis of Dr. Baker as an angry black woman is that the root of her anger is the fact that she lost her son, her 12-year-old son, and that is a heartbreaking feeling. But her anger motivated her to science, and she used her science and her knowledge to be able to bring her son back to life. Granted, she did use it for revenge, but I don't find that to be all that crazy. I would probably want to get back at some people if it were my son who was brutally murdered and the guy who murdered him got the most minimalist punishment I could possibly think of. That being said, I just love Dr. Baker because I love to see intelligent black women, especially a black female mad scientist. I love that. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast, Reproduction of the Angry Black Woman. I hope that if you have not read this graphic novel before, you will look into it. It was very fun to follow along with, and it hit incredibly close to home, touching on the topic of police brutality and gun violence. In my next episode, I will talk about another novel. I cannot reveal what the name is, though. You'll just have to wait and see. Anyway, thanks again for spending time with me as we explore the angry black women in the media. That's a wrap for now. Stay tuned for more episodes.